People often think of agriculture as wide open rural spaces dotted with farmhouses and barns, large fields of hay and grain, and animals grazing. But along the highly urbanized Wasatch Front in northern Utah, there is a small but growing population of farmers who are creatively using precious plots of land to grow food, mostly to be sold directly to local consumers. For the next few minutes, we'll visit with a few urban farmers who are growing crops in and near cities and fueling the local food movement. We'll look at what they do, how they do it, and what it will take to keep them farming into the future. Members of the Roberts family have been farming the same land in Layton, Utah since 1850.
I'm the sixth generation on the farm, still farming, multi-generational. My father still farms with me.
30 years ago, when Tyson Roberts was a boy, the family farmed more than 200 acres. A lot has changed in the family and the community in recent decades.
As generations have passed, grandmother passing away and land being divided up among other siblings. Also a lot of leased ground that has just basically been developed and lost in that respect. So we, starting around over 200 acres, we're down to about 60 acres a year.
Of that 60 acres, Roberts owns 18 acres, which means 2/3 of the land they have under cultivation could be developed at any time.
And the rest of the ground is spread out between about 3 miles, 3-mile radius. So we're spread out, we're moving equipment around a lot on the roads.
In less than a generation, Layton City has gone from a farming community to a suburban city with large-scale residential developments going up every year. The day we interviewed Roberts, the old sod farm north of his greenhouses was just starting to be turned into a subdivision. A few weeks earlier, as we watched Roberts and his father prepare the tomato field for planting, the finishing touches were being put on a subdivision to the west of the same field. Farming in a rapidly growing urban area has drawbacks and benefits, Roberts says.
Definitely more difficult to farm, difficult moving equipment around, a lot higher population, a lot more risk as far as people coming onto the farm, creating damage to the crops. Just a lot of different changes, a lot of benefits as well. We've changed our farming operation from a mostly wholesale crops to retail, where we have the customers right in place.
Roberts sells at several farmers markets a week and right at the farm at a self-serve farm stand. Selling directly to the public means communicating with the public at farmers markets and through other means.
So I use social media to share my farm story basically, and also it's turned into a good marketing tool. So I have a lot of friends on Facebook that I just keep up to date on when a certain crop is available, when the sweet corn comes on, when the tomatoes come on. People, there's lots of customers out there, and if they know that I've got tomatoes, they'll come to the farm.
Roberts plans to keep farming the rest of his life and pass the legacy along to the 7th generation of Roberts family farmers. In Bountiful, Utah, less than 10 miles from downtown Salt Lake City, Ralph Larson still farms a small part of the ground where he's lived since he was 9 years old. Now, 75 years later, the original 20-acre farm is less than 2 acres.
A lot of cherry orchards here and peach orchards, a lot of strawberries, cantaloupes, watermelons. Now we've got a few raspberries and peach trees and a few apple trees. That's about it. We're raising garlic this year, coming along pretty good.
A few years ago, Larson wanted to continue farming, but be less involved in the business. so other family members got involved, and Larson Farms became Three Squares Produce Farms. They now manage the home property and leased fields.
Just west of the airport's a little farm down there. We're sort of leasing that, and then down on Alpine, Utah, there's some land down there we're leasing to raise some potatoes and corn, squash, and some pumpkins maybe.
Like many urban farms today, Three Squares sells at farmers markets directly from the farm and to about 25 weekly customers who sign up for the season. Larson remembers when Bountiful was mostly made up of orchards and farms. Now his is one of the few remaining farms in the area.
All the farms are pretty well gone nowadays. They're replacing with houses. And it looks like our food's going to have to come from overseas. We're not having any farms kept here anymore.
Like the title of this family history book indicates, this small property is the last orchard on Orchard Drive. Larson said he has changed some things over the years. He no longer needs the bigger tractor, opting for a smaller garden tractor. He tries not to make too much dust or noise that may disturb the neighbors, and they switched exclusively to produce many years ago.
Yeah, you don't have any animals anymore. They sort of, I had horses and cows and that years ago, and as new people moved in, they didn't like the smell of animals, so you sort of had to get rid of them. And so all we got now is a dog.
In downtown Kaysville, John Borski grows vegetables on about an acre of ground he bought nearly 20 years ago from his grandmother. He is surrounded on all sides by homes, and more are going in right next door.
And the kids from the old lady who died there said that they would sell me the property for $10,000 over the appraisal until the developers got bidding on it and paid $100,000 more than the appraisal. And it was my dream to be working on that one day. That was really the answer to not having to drive down to Layton, 5 days a week.
Like many urban farmers, Borski needs more land than he owns. He leases a field in Layton about 5 miles away. And like many of his peers, farming hasn't always been his occupation.
I was a professional dancer. I lived in Denver, Colorado, and I directed a ballet company there, and I had a big house. I started growing my own vegetables in the back, and the more I thought about dancing as a silly business, I thought, I gotta go buy Grandma's farm, and I gotta grow organic vegetables in Utah, because nobody is doing it, and there still are not that many people doing it.
Borski chooses to grow organic vegetables to provide healthy eating alternatives to local residents.
I hear from, parents, and it's not every day or every week, but if it's once a year or something like that, my kid's been diagnosed with cancer, and my doctor is telling me to eat organic vegetables. They think it could be the pesticides or things that are weakening his immune system and different things like that. So I love organic farming, but it's frustrating. It is not an easy thing to do.
For Borski, farming is a passion and a cause, one he plans to continue through his lifetime. In West Bountiful, Mele Tuaoni loves to show off her garden.
Before I became a gardener or a farmer or any kind of thing like that, it used to bore me to have people talk about their garden, because we talk incessantly. We just love every single thing about it. So.
Tuaoni is the farm manager for her family's farm, Mololo Gardens. Like other urban farmers, they grow in more than one location, and they don't own all the land on which they grow. They lease about 2.5 acres in West Bountiful.
My dad has watched this land sit fallow for, a couple of decades, and last year when we needed a spot to grow, he just approached him and said, "Hey, look, we'd really love to use this land." And she told us that when her ancestors came to Bountiful, and this is back in the pioneer days, they asked the Native Americans, what is the most fertile land in this area? And this West Bountiful is the spot that they pointed out.
The family owns about an acre of orchard and raised bed gardens a couple blocks away, right next to I-15. They also own about 5 acres north of the Salt Lake International Airport.
Third piece of property is this one over here in North Salt Lake. It's the one that the greenhouse sits on, and we work with 3 Squares Produce. And that one we have the corn on, we have the 2,200 square foot hoop house and a 3,000 square foot heated greenhouse. Heated and cooled, I guess, in the summer greenhouse.
Along with not knowing how long they will have access to the property they don't own, Tuaone says the biggest challenge of urban farming is having crops spread out between locations.
Going different places is definitely a big challenge. I've got 3 different places to work. I've got my lettuce at 3 different spots, so anytime I want to harvest lettuce, and the problem is that I've got 3 varieties here, 4 varieties here, 7 varieties here, and I want a nice, gorgeous spring mix. So I'm not going to just harvest from one spot. I will always harvest from all 3 places in order to make my spring blend.
Tuaone expects to keep farming for a long time to come. While this is her full-time profession, she isn't in it for the money. She is passionate about her work, and she wants to provide quality local produce for city residents. She has 25 weekly customers and sells at about 6 farmers markets.
So my name is Sharon Leopardi, and I run a urban farm called Backyard Urban Garden Farms, also known as Bug Farms. And I have 10 backyards across Salt Lake City and in Sandy that I use as my farmland.
You won't find a lot of large farm equipment or loud noises at Sharon Leopardi's farm, as she, her employees, and work trade volunteers carefully cut microgreens and salad greens for her weekly customers. There is a peaceful feeling in the garden. It's a gentler kind of farming than takes place at larger farms. Leopardi is part of a growing number of younger urban farmers who don't own any land. They grow food in other people's backyards.
There is a pretty growing movement of young people interested in agriculture, probably for more alternative reasons, not so much because their families have been into it, but more because we've learned about the state of our food system in this country and are not happy with it and want to be a part of a change. And so that's my motivation for wanting to become a farmer, is I wanted to be involved with where my food comes from.
In business since 2010, Bug Farms sells to restaurants and season-long customers. Her 145 community-supported agriculture shareholders pay at the beginning of the year for a season's worth of vegetables. Each week, they receive a share of what's available that week.
We focus on crops that don't take a lot of time, and they also are pretty compact when they grow. So we do lots and lots of different kinds of greens and root veggies, including a bunch of different radishes and turnips and beets and carrots. We do a lot of tomatoes because people love them, and cucumbers, summer squash, and green beans.
While Leopardi and her employees don't make a lot of money by many people's standards, they do okay and get to do what they love. They also don't have debt or large capital expenses. While things are going well this year, she knows that not owning any land makes her business vulnerable.
Using other people's backyards is awesome because they don't have to pay for it, but it's also a drawback because it's not a stable place. Like, they might decide the next year that they want to have their own garden, and so I've invested all of this time and effort in amending the soil, putting in an irrigation system, and then it might have to go away the next year. To buy property, unless you already had another job doing something else and had a bunch of money already, it would be really, really difficult to buy land here. Yeah, property would be way too expensive.
Leopardi and her fellow bug farmers are proving that small-scale urban agriculture can be an economically viable career option for people who are passionate about growing food and providing nutritious local food for a growing population.